In the previous episode, Aram, who has been given hospitality at the monastery, attends the community hour of the monks. During his conversations, in particular with the monks of the Buddha, Aram repeatedly inquires if there might be some great teacher or scholar in the vicinity. And suddenly, Lord Yama appears in the doorway of the long hall, calling out to Aram, exposing his real identity, Mara, the Lord of Illusion. Yama challenges Mara, the dreamer, leading to a battle of wills as they pit their strength of their magical powers against each other, which ends with the dreamer's demise. The conspirators assemble in Ratri's chamber. Tak points out to Yama that the lords of karma could cause an early judgment for some of the monks who had witnessed the struggle earlier that evening, and thus reveal the truth about the dreamer's fate. In response, Yama tells Sam that he must preach a sermon to the monks this very hour, while the vivid impression still troubles their minds. You must call forth within them those nobler sentiments and higher qualities of spirit which make men subject to divine meddling. Ratri and I will then combine our powers, and a new truth will be born. The great-souled Sam, the enlightened one, seats himself before the monks. Sam delivers a complex sermon questioning the nature of language, reality, and the justifications for action, ultimately framing the struggle of good versus ill as one between beauty and ugliness. His sermon concludes with, "Therefore, I say unto you, the aesthetics of what you have witnessed this evening were of a high order. You may ask me, then, how am I to know that which is beautiful and that which is ugly, and be moved to act thereby? This question, I say, you must answer for yourself. To do this, first, forget what I have spoken, for I have said nothing. Dwell now upon the nameless." Early the next morning, the 4 conspirators, with Ratri's servitors bearing her litter, a small band of monks, servants, and her personal guard, depart the monastery, heading to Kaipur and the palace of Kama. When the party finally boards a boat for the last leg of their journey, in the darkness of the night, the goddess Ratri visits Sam as he stands on the deck looking over the water. She asks what he intends to do when they arrive at her palace of pleasure. He responds that he will meditate on his previous lives and the mistakes each contained, as well as on his tactics to oppose the gods and on theirs. Join us this evening to see how Sam reviews his former lives and his strategies to challenge the gods. This is Lord of Light, Episode 4.
One time, a minor Raja from a minor principality came with his retinue into Maharta, the city that is called Gateway of the South and capital of the dawn, there to purchase him a new body. This was in the days when the thread of destiny might yet be plucked from out a gutter. The gods were less formal, the demons still bound, and the celestial city yet occasionally open to men. This is the story of how the prince did bait the one-armed receiver of devotions before the temple, incurring the disfavor of heaven for his presumption. Few are the beings born again among men. More numerous are those born again elsewhere. Anguttara Nikaya 135.
Riding into the capital of Dawn at mid-afternoon, the prince, mounted upon a white mare, passed up the broad avenue of Surya, his 100 retainers massed at his back, his adviser Strake at his left hand, his scimitar in his sash, and a portion of his wealth in the bags his pack horses bore. The heat crashed down upon the turbans of the men, washed past them, came up again from the roadway. A chariot moved slowly by, headed in the opposite direction, its driver squinting up at the banner the chief retainer bore. A courtesan stood at the gateway to her pavilion, studying the traffic. And a pack of mongrel dogs followed at the heels of the horses, barking. The prince was tall, and his mustaches were the color of smoke. His hands, dark as coffee, were marked with the stiff ridges of his veins. Still, his posture was erect, and his eyes were like the eyes of an ancient bird, electric and clear. Ahead, a crowd gathered to watch the passing troop. Horses were ridden only by those who could afford them, and few were that wealthy. The slizzard was the common mount, a scaled creature with snake-like neck, many teeth, dubious lineage, brief lifespan, and a vicious temperament, the horse for some reason having grown barren in recent generations. The prince rode on into the capital of Dawn, the watchers watching. Passing, they turned off the Avenue of the Sun and headed up a narrower thoroughfare. They moved by the low buildings of commerce, the great shops of the great merchants, the banks, the temples, the inns, the brothels. They passed on until, at the fringe of the business district, they came upon the princely hostel of Hawkenna, the most perfect host. They drew rein at the gate, for Hawkenna himself stood outside the walls, simply dressed, fashionably corpulent, and smiling, waiting to personally conduct the white mare within.
"Welcome, Lord Siddhartha,"
he called in a loud voice so that all within earshot might know the identity of his guest.
"Welcome to this well-nightingale's vicinity, and to the perfumed gardens and marble halls of this humble establishment. To your riders, welcome also, who have ridden a goodly ride with you, and no doubt seek subtle refreshment and dignified ease, as well as yourself. Within you will find all things to your liking, I trust, as you have upon the many occasions in the past, when you have tarried within these halls in the company of other princely guests and noble visitors, too numerous to mention, such as—"
And a good afternoon to you also, Hakana,
cried the prince, for the day was hot, and the innkeeper's speeches, like rivers, always threatened to flow on forever.
Let us enter quickly within your walls, where, among their other virtues too numerous to mention, it is also cool.
Hawkenna nodded briskly, and taking the mare by the bridle, led her through the gateway and into his courtyard. There he held the stirrup while the prince dismounted, then gave the horses into the keeping of his stable hands, and dispatched a small boy through the gateway to clean the street where they had waited. Within the hostel, the men were bathed, standing in the marble bath hall while servants poured water over their shoulders. Then did they anoint themselves after the custom of the warrior caste, put on fresh garments, and passed into the hall of dining. The meal lasted the entire afternoon, until the warriors lost count of the courses. At the right hand of the prince, who sat at the head of the long, low serving board, 3 dancers wove their way through an intricate pattern, finger cymbals clicking, faces bearing the proper expressions for the proper moments of the dance, as 4 veiled musicians played the traditional music of the hours. The table was covered with a richly woven tapestry of blue, brown, yellow, red, and green, wherein was worked a series of hunting and battle scenes. Riders, mounted on slizzard and horse, met with lance and bow the charges of feather panda, fire rooster, and jewel-podded command plant. Green apes wrestled in the tops of trees. The Garuda bird clutched a sky demon in its talons, assailing it with beak and pinions. From the depths of the sea crawled an army of horned fish, clutching spikes of pink coral in their jointed fins, facing a row of kirtled and helmeted men who bore lances and torches to oppose their way upon the land. The prince ate but sparingly. He toyed with his food, listened to the music, laughed occasionally at the jesting of one of his men. He sipped a sherbet, his rings clicking against the sides of the glass. Hawkana appeared beside him.
Goes all well with you, Lord?
Yes, good Hakana, all is well.
You do not eat as do your men. Does the meal displease you?
It is not the food, which is excellent, nor its preparation, which is faultless, worthy Hakana. Rather, it is my appetite, which has not been high of late.
Ah, I have the thing, the very thing. Only one such as yourself may truly appreciate it. Long has it rested upon the special shelf of my cellar. The god Krishna had somehow preserved it against the ages. He gave it to me many years ago because the accommodations here did not displease him. I shall fetch it for you.
He bowed then, and backed from the hall. When he returned, he bore a bottle. Before he saw the paper on its side, the prince recognized the shape of that bottle.
Burgundy!
Just so. Brought from vanished Eartha long ago.
He sniffed at it and smiled. Then he poured a small quantity into a pear-shaped goblet and set it before his guest. The prince raised it and inhaled of its bouquet. He took a slow sip. He closed his eyes. There was a silence in the room in respect of his pleasure. Then he lowered the glass, and Hawkana poured into it once again the product of the Pinot Noir grape, which could not be cultivated in this land. The prince did not touch the glass. Instead, he turned to Hawkana, saying,
Who is the oldest musician in this house?
Mankara here,
said his host, gesturing toward the white-haired man who took his rest at the serving table in the corner.
Old, not in body, but in years.
Oh, that would be Dele, if he is to be counted as a musician at all. He says that once he was such a one.
Dele?
The boy who keeps the stables.
Ah, I see. Send for him.
Hawkana clapped his hands and ordered the servant who appeared to go into the stables, make the horse-boy presentable, and fetch him with dispatch into the presence of the diners.
Pray, do not bother making him presentable, but simply bring him here.
He leaned back and waited then, his eyes closed. When the horse-boy stood before him, he asked,
Tell me, Dele, what music do you play?
That which no longer finds favor in the hearing of Brahmins.
What was your instrument?
Piano.
Can you play upon any of these?
He gestured at those instruments that stood, unused now, upon the small platform beside the wall. The boy cocked his head at them.
I suppose I could manage on the flute if I had to.
Do you know any waltzes?
Yes.
Will you play me the Blue Danube?
The boy's sullen expression vanished, to be replaced by one of uneasiness. He cast a quick glance back at Hakena, who nodded.
Siddhartha is a prince among men, being of the first.
The Blue Danube on one of these flutes?
If you please.
The boy shrugged.
I'll try. It's been an awfully long time. Bear with me.
He crossed to where the instruments lay and muttered something to the owner of the flute he selected. The man nodded his head. Then he raised it to his lips and blew a few tentative notes. He paused, repeated the trial, then turned about. He raised it once more and began the quivering movement of the waltz. As he played, the prince sipped his wine. When he paused for breath, the prince motioned him to continue. He played tune after forbidden tune, and the professional musicians put professional expressions of scorn upon their faces. But beneath their table, several feet were tapping in slow time with the music. Finally, the prince had finished his wine. Evening was near to the city of Maharta. He tossed the boy a purse of coins and did not look into his tears as he departed from the hall. He rose then and stretched, smothering a yawn with the back of his hand.
I retire to my chambers,
he said to his men.
Do not gamble away your inheritances in my absence.
They laughed then and bade him good night, calling for strong drink and salted biscuits. He heard the rattle of dice as he departed. The prince retired early so that he might arise before daybreak. He instructed a servant to remain outside his door all the following day, and to refuse admission to any who sought it, saying that he was indisposed. Before the first flowers had opened to the first insects of the morning, he had gone from the hostel, only an ancient green parrot witnessing his departure. Not in silk sewn with pearls did he go, but in tatters, as was his custom on these occasions. Not preceded by conch and drum did he move, but by silence, as he passed along the dim streets of the city. These streets were deserted, save for an occasional doctor or prostitute returning from a late call. A stray dog followed him as he passed through the business district, heading in the direction of the harbor. He seated himself upon a crate at the foot of a pier. The dawn came to lift the darkness from the world, and he watched the ships stirring with the tide, empty of sail, webbed with cables, prows carved with monster or maiden. His every visit to Maharta brought him again to the harbor for a little while. Morning's pink parasol opened above the tangled hair of the clouds, and cool breezes crossed the docks. Scavenger birds uttered hoarse cries as they darted about loop-windowed towers, then swooped across the waters of the bay. He watched a ship put out to sea, tent-like veins of canvas growing to high peaks and swelling in the salt air. Aboard other ships, secure in their anchorage, there was movement now, as crews made ready to load or unload cargoes of incense, coral, oil, and all kinds of fabrics, as well as metals, cattle, hardwoods, and spices. He smelled the smells of commerce and listened to the cursing of the sailors, both of which he admired. The former as it reeked of wealth, and the latter because it combined his two other chief preoccupations, these being theology and anatomy. After a time, he spoke with a foreign sea captain who had overseen the unloading of sacks of grain and now took his rest in the shade of the crates.
Good morning. May your passages be free of storm and shipwreck, and the gods grant you safe harbor and a good market for your cargoes.
The other nodded, seated himself upon a crate, and proceeded to fill a small clay pipe.
Thank you, old one. Though I do pray to the gods of the temples of my own choosing, I accept the blessings of any and all. One can always use blessings, especially a seaman.
Had you a difficult voyage?
Less difficult than it might have been. That smoldering sea mountain, the cannon of Nariti, discharges its bolt against heaven once again.
Ah, you sailed from the southwest.
Yes, Chadistan, from Isbar by the sea. The winds are good in this season of the year, but for this reason they also carried the ash of the cannon much farther than any would think. For 6 days this black snow fell upon us, and the odors of the underworld pursued us, fouling food and water, making the eyes to weep and the throat to burn. We offered much thanksgiving when we finally outran it. See how the hull is smeared? You should have seen the sails, black as the hair of Ratri.
The prince leaned forward to better regard the vessel.
But the waters were not especially troubled?
The sailor shook his head.
We hailed a cruiser near the Isle of Salt, and we learned of it that we had missed by 6 days the worst dischargings of the cannon. At that time it burnt the clouds and raised great waves, sinking 2 ships the cruiser did know of, and possibly a third.
The sailor leaned back, stoking his pipe.
So, as I say, a seaman can always use blessings.
I seek a man of the sea, a captain. His name is Jan Olveg, or perhaps he is now known as Olvaga. Do you know him?
I knew him, but it has been long since he sailed.
Oh? What has become of him?
The sailor turned his head to better study him.
Who are you to ask?
My name is Sam. Jan is a very old friend of mine.
How old is very old?
Many, many years ago, in another place, I knew him when he was captain of a ship which did not sail these oceans.
The sea captain leaned forward suddenly and picked up a piece of wood, which he hurled at the dog who had rounded a piling at the other side of the pier. It yelped once and dashed off toward the shelter of a warehouse. It was the same dog who had followed the prince from the hostel of Hawkana.
Beware the hounds of hell. There are dogs and there are dogs, and there are dogs, 3 different kinds, and in this port drive them all from your presence.
Then he appraised the other once again.
Your hands
He gestured with his pipe.
have recently worn many rings. Their impressions yet remain.
Sam glanced at his hands and smiled.
Your eyes miss nothing, sailor. So, I admit to the obvious. I have recently worn rings.
So, like the dogs, you are not what you appear to be, and you came asking after Olvaga by his most ancient name. Your name, you say, is Sam. Are you perchance one of the first?
Sam did not reply immediately, but studied the other as though waiting for him to say more. Perhaps realizing this, the captain continued.
Olvaga, I know, was numbered among the first, though he never spoke of it. Whether you are yourself among the first, or are one of the masters, you are aware of this. So I do not betray him by so speaking. I do wish to know whether I speak to a friend or an enemy, however.
Jan was never known for the making of enemies. You speak as if he has them now, among those whom you call the masters.
The seaman continued to stare at him.
You are not a master, and you come from afar.
You are correct, but tell me how you know these things.
First, you are an old man. A master, too, could have worn upon him an old body, but he would not, any more than he would remain a dog for very long. His fear of dying the real death, suddenly, in the manner of the old, would be too great. So he would not remain so long as to leave the marks of rings deeply imprinted upon the fingers. The wealthy are never despoiled of their bodies. If they are refused rebirth, they live out the full span of their days. The masters would fear a rising up in arms among the followers of such a one, were he to meet with other than a natural passing. So a body such as yours could not be obtained in this manner. A body from the life tanks would not have marked fingers either. Therefore, I take you to be a man of importance, other than a master. If you knew Olvaga of old, then you are one of the firstlings, such as he. Because of the sort of information you seek, I take you to be one from afar. Were you a man of Maharta, you would know of the masters, and knowing of the masters, you would know why Olvaga cannot sail.
Your knowledge of matters in Maharta seems greater than my own, O newly arrived sailor.
I too come from a distant place,
Acknowledged the captain, smiling faintly.
but in the space of a dozen months I may visit twice as many ports. I hear news of the gossip and tales from all over, from more than a double dozen ports. I hear of the intrigues of the palace and the affairs of the temple. I hear the secrets whispered at night to the golden girls beneath the sugar-cane bough of Kama. I hear of the campaigns of Kasharia and the dealings of the great merchants in the futures of grains and spices, jewels and silk. I drink with the bards and the astrologers, with the actors and the servants, the coachmen and the tailors. Sometimes perhaps I may strike the port where freebooters have haven, and learn there the farings of they hold ransom. Do not think it strange that I, who come from afar, may know more of Maharta than you, who may dwell perhaps a week's faring hence. Occasionally, I may even hear of the doings of the gods.
Then you can tell me of the masters and why they are to be numbered as enemies?
I can tell you something of them, since you should not go unwarned. The body merchants are now the masters of karma. Their individual names are now kept secret after the manner of the gods, so that they seem as impersonal as the great wheel which they claim to represent. They are no longer merely body merchants, but are allied with the temples. These too are changed, for your kinsmen of the first, who are now gods, do commune with them from heaven. If you are indeed of the first, Sam, your way must lead you either to deification or extinction when you face these new masters of karma.
How?
Details you must seek elsewhere. I do not know the processes whereby these things are achieved. Ask after Janaveg, the sailmaker, on the Street of the Weavers.
This is how Jan is now known?
The other nodded.
And beware the dogs, or for that matter anything else which is alive and may harbor intelligence.
What is your name, Captain?
In this port, I have no name at all, or a false one, and I see no reason for lying to you. Good day, Sam.
Good day, Captain. Thank you for your words.
Sam rose and departed the harbor, heading back toward the business district and the streets of the trades. The sun was a red discus in the heavens, rising to meet the bridge of the gods. The prince walked through the awakened city, threading his way among the stalls, displaying the skills of the workmen in the small crafts. Hawkers of unguents and powders, perfumes and oils moved about him. Florists waved their garlands and corsages at the passer-by, and the vintners said nothing, sitting with their wineskins on rows of shaded benches, waiting for their customers to come to them, as they always did. The morning smelled of cooking food, musk, flesh, excrement, oils, and incense, all churned up together and turned loose to wander like an invisible cloud. Dressed as a beggar himself, it did not seem out of place for him to stop and speak to the hunchback with the begging bowl.
Greetings, brother. I am far from my quarter on an errand. Can you direct me to the Street of the Weavers?
The hunchback nodded and shook his bowl suggestively. Sam withdrew a small coin from the pouch concealed beneath his tattered garments. He dropped it in the hunchback's bowl, and it quickly vanished.
That way.
The man gestured with his head.
The third street you come upon, turn there, to the left, and follow it past 2 streets more, and you will be at the circle of the fountain before the temple of Varuna. Coming into that circle, the Street of the Weavers is marked by the sign of the awl.
He nodded to the hunchback, patted his hump, and continued on his way. When he reached the circle of the fountain, the prince halted. Several dozen people stood in a shifting line before the temple of Varuna, most stern and august of all the deities. These people were not preparing to enter the temple, but rather were engaged in some occupation that required waiting and taking turns. He heard the rattling of coins, and he wandered nearer. It was a machine, gleaming and metallic, before which they moved. A man inserted a coin into the mouth of a steel tiger. The machine began to purr. He pressed buttons, cast in the likenesses of animals and demons. There came then a flashing of lights along the lengths of the nagas, the 2 holy serpents who twisted about the transparent face of the machine. He edged closer. The man drew down upon the lever that grew from the side of the machine, cast in the likeness of the tail of a fish. A holy blue light filled the interior of the machine. The serpents pulsed redly, and there, in the midst of the light, and a soft music that had begun to play, a prayer wheel swung into view and began spinning at a furious pace. The man wore a beatific expression. After several minutes, the machine shut itself off. He inserted another coin and pulled the lever once more, causing several of those nearer to the end of the line to grumble audibly, remarking to the effect that that was his 7th coin. It was a warm day, and there were other people waiting to get some praying done, and why did he not go inside and render such a large donation directly to the priests? Someone replied that the little man obviously had much atoning to do. There then began some speculation as to the possible nature of his sins. This was accompanied by considerable laughter. Seeing that there were several beggars waiting their turn in line, the prince moved to its end and stood there. As the line advanced, he noted that while some of those who passed before the machine pushed its buttons, others merely inserted a flat metal disc into the mouth of the 2nd tiger on the opposite side of the chassis. After the machine had ceased to function, the disc fell into a cup and was retrieved by its owner. The prince decided to venture an inquiry. He addressed the man who stood before him in line.
Why is it that some men do have discs of their own?
It is because they have registered.
said the other without turning his head.
In the temple?
Yes,
Oh,
He waited half a minute, then inquired,
those who are unregistered and wish to use it, they push the buttons?
yes. Spelling out their name, occupation, and address.
Supposing one be a visitor here, such as myself.
You should add the name of your city.
Supposing one is unlettered, such as myself. What then?
the other turned to him.
Perhaps 'twere better that you make prayer in the old way, and give the donation directly into the hands of the priests, or else register and obtain a disc of your own.
I see. Yes, you are right. I must think of this more. Thank you.
He left the line and circled the fountain to where the sign of the All hung upon a pillar. He moved up the street of the weavers. 3 times did he ask after Jinaga the sailmaker. The 3rd time of a short woman with powerful arms and a small mustache, who sat cross-legged plaiting a rug in her stall beneath the low eave of what once might have been a stable and still smelled as if it were. She growled him directions after raking him upward and down again with oddly lovely brown velvet eyes. He followed her directions, taking his way up a zigzagging alley and down an outer stair, which ran along the wall of a 5-story building, ending at a door that opened upon a basement hallway. It was damp and dark within. He knocked upon the 3rd door to his left, and after a time it opened. The man stared at him.
Yes.
May I come in? It is a matter of some urgency.
The man hesitated a moment, then nodded abruptly and stepped aside. The prince moved past him and into his chamber. A great sheet of canvas was spread out over the floor before the stool upon which the man reseated himself. He motioned the prince into the only other chair in the room. He was short and big in the shoulders. His hair was pure white, and the pupils of his eyes bore the smoky beginnings of cataract invasion. His hands were brown and hard. The joints of his fingers knotted.
Yes.
Jan Olveg.
The old man's eyes widened, then narrowed to slits. He weighed a pair of scissors in his hand.
It's a long way to Tipperary.
The man stared, then smiled suddenly.
Your heart's not here.
He said, placing the scissors on his workstand.
How long has it been, Sam?
I've lost count of the years.
Me too. But it must be 40, 45 since I've seen you. Much beer over the dam since then, I dare say.
Sam nodded.
I don't really know where to begin.
For a start, tell me, why Janaga?
Why not? It has a certain earnest, working-class sound about it. How about yourself? Still in the prince business?
I'm still me, and they still call me Siddhartha when they come to call.
And a binder of demons. Very good. I take it then, since your fortunes do not match your garb, that you're casing the scene, as is your wont.
Sam nodded.
And I have come upon much which I do not understand.
Okay. How shall I begin? How? I shall tell you of myself. That's how. I have accumulated too much bad karma toward the current transfer.
What?
Bad karma. That's what I said. The old religion is not only the religion, it is the revealed, enforced, and frighteningly demonstrable religion. But don't think that last part too loudly. About a dozen years ago, the council authorized the use of psychoprobes on those who were up for renewal. This was right after the accelerationist decret split, when the Holy Coalition squeezed out the tech boys and kept right on squeezing. The simplest solution was to outlive the problem. The temple crowd then made a deal with the body sellers. Customers were brain probed and accelerationists were refused renewal. Or, well, simple as that. There aren't too many accelerationists now. But that was only the beginning. The God Party was quick to realize that therein lay the way of power. Having your brain scanned has become a standard procedure just prior to transfer. The body merchants are become the masters of karma and a part of the temple structure. They read over your past life, weigh the karma, and determine your life that is yet to come. It is a perfect way of maintaining the caste system and ensuring theocratic control. By the way, most of our old acquaintances are in it up to their halos.
God.
Plural. They've always been considered gods, with their aspects and attributes, but they made it awfully official now. And anyone who happens to be amongst the first had bloody well better be sure whether he wants quick deification or the pyre when he walks into the hall of karma these days. When's your appointment?
Tomorrow in the afternoon. Why are you still walking around if you don't have a halo or a handful of thunderbolts?
Because I do have a couple friends, both of whom suggested I continue living quietly rather than face the probe. I took their sage advice to heart and consequently am still around to main sales and raise occasional hell in the local bistros. Else,
He raised a callous hand, snapped his fingers.
if not the real death, then perhaps a body shot full with cancer, or the interesting life of a gelded water buffalo, or
A dog?
just so.
Jan filled the silence and 2 glasses with a splashing of alcohol. End of episode 4.